Okay, I don't see any other questions. And since we have three speakers in this session, we're going to keep it rolling. Thanks so much, Jim. Appreciate your contributions and one of my favorite topics. So I'd love to hear about it. And again, we'll have resources to share with everybody here in a little bit. And I know it's been a tough spring for Hocking College because they're trying to teach field classes from computers. So it's been a rough time. So appreciate all that you do. And we're going to turn it over to Bob.Mulligan here in just a second. So thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Dave.
You hear me okay,
Bob?
Dave?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'm one of the people that's having internet problems today, as Dave alluded to there. So it's been a challenge to get this up and going, but I think we found the technology. Julie's going to be my assistant, I believe. They all may advance the slides, so we'll muddle through. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Julie. There we go. Well, this is kind of a unique picture, but this kind of sums up what we're going to talk about in a way. It says a stitch in time can save 9. And that's an old expression that's been around forever. And basically what it means is if you get a rip in your pants, your sock, or whatever, if you can catch that thing early and put a couple stitches in it, it's probably not going to rip out. Well, I can't think of a better analogy for trail maintenance. So many times we're trying to figure out how to fix a trail after it's already blown up. It's become unpassable. It's very expensive. If we can catch it early, it just saves everybody a lot of headache. I think we missed a slide somewhere, Julie. Can you go back up one?
Are we on the right one yet? I think there's a delay.
Yeah, you're good there. Thanks. Yeah, that's fine. So basically, when we go to the woods, I was telling Dave the other day, this is really a good time, I think, to look in the woods and look for your trails and see how they're holding up. I think if most of us are really honest, at least for me anyway, my favorite time to be in the woods is the fall. So I want my trails to be really good then. Spring's probably my second favorite time. The time none of us really want to be out there typically is the dead of summer when we're fighting the heat and stuff. But that's what normally happens. We end up finding things in the summer, having to work in the bugs and everything. This is just a good time of year to catch it before that happens. So some things we're going to look for when we go out in the woods. The first thing, safety items, first and foremost. Overhead hazards. I'll show you what an example of that is here in a second. Things that are lower to the ground, what I call eye pokers and head knockers. Those are things that just make your trail unenjoyable or maybe even dangerous to use on a daily basis. Ground hazards, and that'll vary depending on what you're going to use the trail for. And then the one I'm going to focus on probably the most is the washouts, the soil erosion. That seems like that's the area people have the most trouble figuring out how to do on their own. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Next slide. Okay, so here's a good example of an overhead hazard. This actually, I took this picture just the other day from a township road, believe it or not. This limb is hanging in a tree directly above the road surface. So every day people are driving underneath this thing. So it's one of them deals, like it's very hard to get out of the tree. It's dangerous to get out of the tree. If this is over top of your trail, probably the safest thing honestly to do is rope your trail off, put some ribbon across it. Tell all your family, anybody that's going to use your trail, not to pass there until that thing falls down. It's almost even too dangerous to try to bring down by any natural or by any man-made means. You're better off to let nature take its course and flag it off. So next slide. So here's one I call head knockers. I mentioned eye pokers and head knockers. You know, a lot of times you got to think about what your trail is going to be used for. A lot of times when we're doing trail maintenance, we don't really look up much. And as long as we can walk underneath that, we think we're good. But think about who else is going to be using your trail and what they're using it for. Horse trails are notorious for this. I don't know how many trail rides I've been on in the Smokies and other places where you have to constantly duck down below limbs. It's just not safe. So make sure that you not only have the eye pokers cleaned out, but also have that stuff that can knock somebody in the head on the horse out too. The horse is under the illusion that he's under control, and you're under the illusion that you're under control. Well, the reality is, you know, gravity's under control. If you hit a limb, you're going to fall off that horse. So next slide. Ground hazards, again, depends on what you're going to use the trail for, but think about it ahead of time if you got kids or grandkids or yourself. If you want to use it, you know, for trail riding, for mountain bikes, things like that, the last thing you want to do is come flying around a curve and slam into a log or a branch laying across the road. You know, if it's just a hiking path, I may not mind stepping over a 12-inch diameter log, but if I hit it with this, somebody's going to get hurt. So just keep in mind what the trail use is for. Next slide. And this is the one I'm going to focus the most on, again, soil erosion. Here's a classic example. This picture on the left it's from I believe this one came from a national park. I can't remember where I got this picture from, but they tried to contain the trail with some borders here, some wood on each side. What they've actually done is created a channel where the water can't get away from the trail. And it's actually washing itself out by design here. So we'll try to avoid that. Next slide. Okay, so next thing we'll do is we'll get ready to go to the woods. I'm going to show you some video clips as well. Hopefully they turn out okay. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, Julie. So I will warn you, this slide right here, it should be on the cutting room floor. It has a few bloopers in it, but my son and I were kind of in a hurry when we made this. So bear with us and hopefully you'll learn a little bit something. Okay, as we prepare to go to the woods, we need to get some thought about what we want to take with us. I would encourage you to take a hand tool with you every time you go to the woods if you get the opportunity. So if you got trails that are mostly brushed in, maybe you're fighting multiflora rows, autumn olive, things like that, you might want to take a machete with you, for example. If you're dealing more with woody type material, you might want to take a Pulaski or something like that. Basically, a Pulaski is very similar to a mattock. This is a mattock here, mainly designed for moving soil, digging through rocks, things of that nature. A Pulaski is very similar, except it has a much better axe head on it that can actually cut trees down if you need to, or cut limbs with. If I can only own two tools to take to the woods for trail maintenance, it would be a Pulaski and a machete, quite frankly. Everything else is kind of a luxury. What else we got? You know, simple tools. You don't have to run out and buy a bunch of stuff. Even things like a shovel can be very, very useful, as you'll see later on. We do dig some water bars. Shovels are fine for that. A bow saw can be pretty handy if you've got some woody material sticking over top of your trails. Then if you want to get more advanced, we've obviously got chainsaws that you can take advantage of. There went one dog off the table. Then the other thing you can use, I use this quite a bit, you know, just a power trimmer. This one here's got 3 options for it. So I got my regular string trimmer, which don't use in the woods very often at all. It's not very practical. It's just not heavy enough to cut some of the stuff we're dealing with out there. The 2 other options that I've got this one set up for is the triangular blade, which is good for small brushy material or saplings. It works great for that. And if you got some bigger trees or bigger limbs you want to cut, you don't want to have to fool with dragging out a chainsaw, the saw blades work great for that too. So anyway, every time you make a trip out to the woods to do some trail maintenance or to inspect your trails, I would encourage you to take a tool with you. The point is there, and I'm bad about this too, a lot of times we go to the woods just to release some stress or take a hike, and we don't take a tool with us, then we stumble across something that we could have fixed if we had something with us. So just a hand tool is good to carry with you. So really in Ohio, what I got here is water management equals trail management in Ohio. That is our big issue we deal with constantly, is where we're going to put the water, how to get rid of the water, how to keep the water from washing things out. That is our big issue. So next slide. Okay, so here's a little experiment. Dave and I use this one a lot with loggers, trying to teach them how to manage water on logging roads. But all this is an old coffee can. I cut the bottom of it out, took a board and put it on top of it, tapped it a few times with a hammer into an old road. This is an old logging road. We occasionally use it now. It's been used heavily in the past, but not too much in recent years. But anyway, I went ahead and filled it clear full of water. I just timed how long it would take for this can to drain out, how long it takes the water to percolate into the ground. And you can barely see there, it's down probably maybe a ½ inch, quarter to a ½ inch. And that took 20 minutes to do that. So basically what that's telling us is this trail is impervious to water. Anything that hits that trail, the rainfall runoff, anything that's going to hit it, it's going to stay on that trail and not go into the ground. It's going to try to wash it out. So you can go to the next slide, Julie. The next one is going to be a video where I moved just a few feet off the trail, did the same experiment, and you'll see what the results were. This is a video here.
Okay, so I've showed you how long it takes for the water to infiltrate through a compacted, heavily used road. It's very impervious to water. Now we moved over here a few feet just below the road to kind of show you the difference in an undisturbed soil. If we can get that water from that compacted road system, that trail system, back over into this leaf litter, it's probably going to help us a lot. So let's go ahead and fill this up. Sorry for the camera work. You see how long it takes for this to start moving down through the soil profile. You can already see a difference because it's hard to even keep it filled up. Okay, so I've already put more water in than I did the last one to start with, because the last one just filled up instantaneously, no problem at all. Okay, you can already see that the water's already went down within about, what, 15 seconds, what it took us 20 minutes to do on the other soil. So we can definitely see we're getting more water infiltration here. So rather than making you guys watch water go down to the soil, I'm going to go ahead and stop the film, and then I'll give you an update on how long this took to actually drain out. It's actually moving pretty good there right now.
Okay, so it took about 4 minutes for that can to drain out. Like I say, the other one went down maybe at the most a half inch in 20 minutes. So you can go ahead and play that one, Julie.
All right, so we're out here in the woods today to take a look at a old trail. This is actually on my own property here, but this trail's been here for probably about 100 years or so. It used to be the main access road to a hayfield up here on top of the hill, but it's now reverted back to woods. So what we're looking for is any signs that need repaired. Anything over the winter that's come unraveled, we want to try to get it tightened up as quick as we can so the road doesn't fall apart. First thing you'll notice here right off the bat is we've got this little washout taking place here. And I'll show you in a minute where this all goes, but it's going to cause some problems further down the hill if we don't get it fixed. The source of the problem is actually this little headwater stream that pops up here to my left. It's dumping on the road, and really what should be happening here, this should be kicking off straight across the road, either through a culvert, or in my case, I'm going to try to put an open ditch in here, kind of like a water bar, to basically kind of route this water back over into the leaf litter. And like I showed you in the previous video, if we can get that water back into that leaf litter, it will go down, disappear, and not flow across the surface of the ground. So that's what I'm going to do, is take a few minutes and try to dig some of this out, and we'll come right back and take a look and see how it turns out. Okay, welcome back. Here we got our water bar just put in. My son's filming for me today, and he told me it took about 5 minutes to put it in, which wasn't too bad. This is not a really big water bar like you'd typically see on a logging job. It doesn't need to be, honestly. This is going to have to deal with four-wheeler traffic, some foot traffic. It's something that's easily maintained as we drive by here on the four-wheeler. I will tell you this, one thing, you're on a four-wheeler or an ATV or anything like that, look behind you as much as you look ahead. See what kind of damages you've caused with that piece of equipment. If you got a side-by-side, carry a mattock, carry a rake, something where you can do some work with, and just clean up these spots as you see them. So I think this is going to take care of our problem here. As you can see, the stream comes down the hill, basically kicks right across back into the leaf litter, and keeps us from washing out the trail down below. So it should work out pretty well.
Okay, here's just a reminder. I stumbled onto this as I was walking through the woods doing these videos. Just keep an eye out for things like this. Just an old hollow log that's probably going to end up being used as a culvert at some point. So keep an eye out. Just a good time to strategize what you can do for free. It doesn't cost you anything. So next slide, Julie.
Okay, so now I'm standing on the property line. My son's got the camera back on our property. This is the neighbor's property here in the background. This is just a reminder that sometimes, you'll be talking about later today about property line boundaries and marking, how important it really is, because this is the neighbor's trail. You can see how close it is to the property line. Our trail goes back that way behind my son where he's at. So it's real easy for someone to get lost, jump off this trail, and head down our trail back here behind him. So one of the things you can do, and this is just kind of an accidental thing that happened on this site, but you can put down dead trees, drop a tree down across the trail. Anything to slow people down is going to be useful. But it's just a reminder that if you've got trails that close to yours, not only do you have your own maintenance issues to deal with, but you might have some problems coming from off the property as well. Today's presentation is not really about water quality. I talk about that enough in other presentations, but it's hard to really not mention it in this spot here, because there's a spot where your trail maintenance, your washing and your maintenance and your usability of your trail kind of intersects with water quality. We can see there's already some tire ruts coming down from the side-by-side that's been using this quite a bit. So we got water coming from both directions into this little stream. There's different ways of dealing with this. Honestly, I think one of the ways you could do well is put back about where the camera is, put a water bar in there, maybe one about 10 feet behind me here. Would go a long way to protect this. The other things you could do would be a small bridge, wooden bridge, and seed, mulch, everything around it. A culvert would work just fine as well. But just remember, you know, we're talking about maintaining your trail, making it usable and sustainable. But don't forget, you got to protect the water quality while you're doing it too. They're not mutually exclusive things. Okay, this is a good spot to teach you a little bit about outsloping. Outsloping is just a technique where you try to design the road where it outslopes. It slopes toward the outside of the road. So any water that comes off the left side of this hill wants to flow back to the right without actually following the trail down. Here's the problem though. Anytime we run a side-by-side, a farm tractor, any kind of equipment on this, we got tires to deal with. So once you get the tire ruts, you basically build a diversion. So now instead of the water wanting to slide off to the right and just go on down to the hill into the leaf litter and disappear, it's now following this way and going all the way down around the corner here and starting to wash out. Again, stitching time saves 9. If somebody gets on this pretty quick, with a little bit of shaping, either by hand, it could be done with a farm tractor and a blade. Wouldn't take much to get this water back where it wants to go naturally. Just got to do it quick. So another area you want to pay particular attention to are culverts. And culverts are one of those things that get neglected quite a bit. We put them in and kind of forget about them. But spring's a great time to take a look and see how your culvert held up through the winter. This is a fairly recently installed culvert, so it's in pretty good shape. Things you want to check for, obviously, leaves, debris, any kind of sticks that have built up across here that might dam it up. And obviously, if it gets dammed up, it may overtop the fill of the culvert and cause it to blow out, which is a maintenance issue. But there's another good reason, too, to keep these things cleaned up that people don't think about sometimes, and that's fire. Anyone that's had the misfortune of having a wildfire on their property knows how devastating that can be. And culverts, believe it or not, are a major source of problems on wildfires. That leafy debris that builds up at the top and the bottom, the inlet and the outlet of the culvert, can actually serve as fuel to have the fire jump across your trail. So otherwise your trail can make a great fire break to keep the fire from spreading. But if the fire would happen to hit fuel in the outlet of your culvert, it actually almost becomes like a flamethrower on this end. The heat will rise up through the tube, catch any fuel you got here in the front on fire, and basically cause the spread of the fire to accelerate. So it's a bad deal. You want to make sure those are cleaned out. Spring is a great time to do that. We're in fire season here in Ohio right now. March, April, and May are some of our peak fire season in the spring. We also have a fire season in the fall in October and November. So this is just a great time to check on your culverts, make sure they're cleaned out. Not only for your maintenance of your road system or your skid trail or whatever you're happening to be maintaining, hiking trail, whatever it happens to be, but also to prevent wildfire from becoming a problem. One tool I'm going to recommend to you is a leaf blower. Just a simple gas-powered leaf blower. Does a great job of cleaning out culverts. They're relatively inexpensive to have around. They do a great job for the job at hand here. So I would recommend you get one of those. We're going to have a special training this summer for the Friday series, the Day in the Woods program on tools, and this will be one of the tools we'll have highlighted there to show you how these work out in a woods setting. So thanks.
With that, I'm probably going to wrap up, Julie, just to make sure we have enough time for Mark's presentation. There were a couple questions that came in, it looks like, and I can either, depending on how you want to do this, Dave, I can either answer them live or I can type in the answer.
If you see them, go ahead and answer them.
Okay. I thought I saw a couple more earlier, but
there's one in the chat and there's two in the question box.
Okay. I see one in the question and answer box. Is any comments or special considerations for trails that run near or parallel to creeks, streams, or riparian areas? Yeah, I mean, obviously, you want to allow some buffer area between those two. That's the big thing, is making sure you have buffer. The other thing is try not to discharge any of that drainage directly into the stream unless you can maintain ground cover. If you can keep grass on it, that's fine. But if you've just got raw material from a ATV, you definitely want to get rid of that water someplace else before it hits that point. Any recommendations for repairing or improving trails that have been deeply rutted by stuck vehicles? That's a tough one. The very first thing I'll tell you on that one is get rid of the water again. A lot of those areas will actually somewhat heal themselves up over time just from freezing and thawing and whatnot. But you got to get rid of the water or that's going to continue to be running up again and again and again. Short of that, you're looking at heavier equipment, maybe a farm tractor, loader, dozer, or something like that. But the key is to get rid of the water, always to get rid of the water first. And I think somebody else asked a question about seeding earlier. They wanted to know if you could put regular grass seed down in woods. And I'm not sure what you mean by regular grass seed, but I would steer clear of most of your lawn mixes, honestly. Most of those are designed with an endophyte fungus in them on purpose. It's basically a toxin, and most wildlife are not attracted to it. They don't like it. So I would steer clear of that. I'd stick with a wildlife mix, something with some shade tolerant species in it, but steer clear of the lawn mixes for sure. I think there might have been one more, Dave, I may have missed.
One more point on that. I just talked to a landowner that said that they had heard from someone in another state that if you're not buying good quality seed, you can introduce a lot of non-native invasives like stilt grass as
Absolutely.
well. So don't scrimp on your seed and get weed-free seed.
Yeah. Yeah, I would you want to stick more with if it's good for cattle or livestock, that's probably what you want in the woods because it's also going to attract wildlife as well. Orchard grass, ryegrass that's made for grazing, not the ryegrass you use in your lawn, but the endophyte's a different issue. I hate to even bring that up because it's such a detailed topic, but the other question somebody had was how far apart to put water bars. And that's a really good question. We've actually got a book that's designed to help loggers here in the state. It's called BMPs. It's a long book title, but it's called BMPs for Erosion Control for Logging Practices in Ohio. And on page 50 of that book, it actually gives you a chart. Just as an example, if it's a 10% slope, it's recommending an 80% spacing. If it's 15, 60 feet apart, if it's 20% slope, 45 feet apart. So that kind of gives you an idea on the steeper ground, how far apart to put them. But it's a good question.